Venus enters Scorpio this week. It happens on Monday. If you'd like an example, you can watch my Mars in Scorpio 1 video, which is very different from my other videos, and then apply that to Venus. It's like, so your hunger for pleasures, once you get them, then what do? You're just going to want it again later, or maybe it doesn't satisfy you in the way that you thought, in like the lasting way that you thought. If you've ever heard the song Thriller by Michael Jackson, you might notice that there's a hole in the bass line. It's this driving bass line, but the thing that makes it super interesting is there's a gaping hole in it. It's missing something, and that's hot. So on Monday, the moon trines Jupiter, then Venus enters Scorpio, and then the moon squares Mars. With Venus in a Mars-ruled sign, Venus doesn't do well in Mars-ruled signs. There's a tension between the pleasure that Venus can bring and the wanting to change the situation that Mars can bring. Normally with Venus, you want to stay in that situation, but there's a tension with Venus and Mars ruled sign. There's a sense of dissatisfaction that can cause conflict, or conflict can arise out of pleasurable situations. I keep using the word pleasure, which has like sexual connotations, but this could just be like friend situations or art situations, delicious food situations, all of which could certainly have sexual connotations. Scorpio itself is a pretty sexy sign. So whatever haunted smooching you want to do this week, you'll find it supported. Just be careful. Also on Monday, the moon completes its closing square with the sun. So we have the moon waning down, and we're preparing for the dark moon next week. On Tuesday, we have the moon connecting with some outer planets, but the main event is Venus in early Scorpio, trining Saturn in early Pisces. What I see here is a drive to, and possibly the ability to, transgress a boundary. Maybe it's a hidden boundary. Maybe you'll be able to actually live out your inappropriate sexual fantasy about the haunted mansion at Disney World. But something about completing your transgressive fantasy might make you a specter yourself, forever and ever. And the moon opposite Neptune on the same day, everything could just dissolve before you, or turn to sand, or mist. Neptune is stationing this week, so Neptune themes are likely to be intense. Neptune stations early in the morning on Wednesday. A couple years ago when Neptune stationed, I was down a YouTube rabbit hole, and I was certain that I knew where the lost city of Atlantis was. It was the Rishat structure in Africa. I was certain of this. Now I'm not so certain. I'm back to not really knowing. Neptune stationing can do that. Something that you're not sure of or hadn't occurred to you, perhaps it's startlingly clear out of nowhere, or the other way around. Something that you were very clear on can become very confusing. And that's something that Neptune does. Neptune is spirituality. It blends everything together, the real and the not real, and it makes you wonder what's real and not real. In fact, that distinction becomes very inarticulate. So when Neptune is especially prominent in our charts or in the sky, we want to release our trying to know or trying to figure out what's real and what isn't. How do you navigate life if you don't and can't know what's real? You would navigate it differently than if you understand or think you understand everything. I think working with Neptune presents an opportunity to work with the concept of surrender. And with my example, the lost city of Atlantis is an already confusing subject. Neptune's direct station this year also connects with our Mercury retrograde period coming up. Mercury is very in shadow right now. That means it's transiting the degrees through which it will eventually retrograde back. Mercury makes a square aspect with Neptune 3 times throughout December and January. The first one was in late November. The second one will be December 27th. And the third one will be January 9th. I always associate Mercury and Sagittarius with sales. So connecting in square aspect with Neptune. Did you buy the wrong thing? Did you sell somebody the wrong thing? Did you sell somebody something they didn't need? Did you try to articulate something and no matter what you do, it's going to be misrepresented? How do you navigate life if that's the case? If no matter what you do, the information's not going to be conveyed. No matter what you do, the thing isn't going to be delivered to the right place, or the wrong thing is going to be delivered to the right place, or all deliveries have stopped and turned into jello. However, I'll reiterate, this intensification of Neptune can contribute, at least in a romantic way, to the playing out of our unusual fantasies. Neptune is associated in Western-style tarot decks with the Hanged Man, who was originally called the Traitor. That can give us an insight into the archetype of Neptune and not really understanding what we're doing, but believing that what we're doing is right, or just feeling unconsciously led into what we're doing. It's like how you can undermine yourself if you're getting intoxicated a lot, or if you believe something is true and you act accordingly, and then that thing turns out not to be true, you're a traitor. So Neptune's station gives us something to be careful with the Venus, Jupiter, Venus in Scorpio, Jupiter in Taurus themes of this week. Also on Wednesday morning, the moon moves into Libra, a Venus-ruled sign, where Venus just left and where the south node is. So still we have this theme of a kind of a bottoming out of our pleasures, or a not sustainable flow of grace and ease and delight in our lives. It's a little difficult to come by. Venus themes will be a little weird until she clears Saturn in late December. On Wednesday, Mercury is also applying to a trine with Jupiter, which goes exact on Thursday night. On Thursday, we just have the moon sextiling Mars and the moon sextiling the sun. On Wednesday, the moon is also applying to a sextile with Mars. So there's an opportunity to take action and really get it done. And with Neptune stationing and Mars squaring Neptune by sign, applying to a square to Neptune, on Wednesday and possibly Monday and Tuesday, there is a sense of like, I'm going to do something, I'm doing it, I got it done, and then maybe it's the wrong thing. Or maybe it was not a wise thing to do. Something to be careful of. Unless you're like making a film, like an art film or something, that's a good like Mars Neptune. If you're making an art engineering thing, if you're making like an art website, or like if you're doing some capoeira, maybe Neptune stationing with Mars is, or even any type of martial arts. Okay, so on Thursday, technically you get the moon sextiling Mars, but that's very early in the day, and the moon sextiling the sun, so we can see what we're doing. And on Thursday, Mercury is also applying to a trine with Jupiter, which goes exact on Thursday night. Mercury is in shadow, and this is the first of 3 trines to Jupiter it will make. You can see my separate Mercury retrograde video for that. So whatever good thing, it will be reassessed and reworked, but the basic theme I think of is how to make the best of a good situation. This is Mercury and Jupiter in Earth signs. So how can we plan and think about structures in our lives that can increase what we already have? Mercury and Jupiter together are kind of difficult because Mercury wants to, especially in Capricorn, get down to the brass tacks, figure out the specifics, do the math. Jupiter is a much more effervescent energy of hope and faith, like no matter what, just have faith that God or whoever or whatever is going to support you. In Capricorn, no one is coming to save you. So Mercury in Capricorn, trining Jupiter, there's some beneficial blend of Jupiter's offering this physical bounty, or offering this opportunity that you can cultivate into something better for yourself and others, or your family or your community, or the earth. And cynical, cold, calculating Mercury in Capricorn can help with that, can help make that real. Because to make things real, you have to sacrifice some of the idealism in your dream. The unicorn version of your dream, when made real, is going to be missing some things. It's not going to have that soft, warming filter all over everything. So this series of 3 Mercury trine Jupiters, depending on the houses in your chart, again, you can see my Mercury retrograde video about that, is an energy that can help us make our dream real. According to what houses Capricorn and Taurus are in your chart, and what houses Jupiter and Mercury both rule for you. If you don't know how to look that up, I made a free course on how to read your own chart. You can get that by signing up for my newsletter at hellington.net or voyage.earth. The moon hits the south node in Libra first thing on December 8th, Friday. It could be a part of this. Jupiter in Taurus is ruled by Venus, which rules the sign of Libra, which is currently in detriment, but applying to aspect with Jupiter. The south node is like the less button. It presents a bottoming out. The mythical representation of the south node is a dragon with no head, so just all tail. So you might be called to release something, or you might want to release something, or you might get a repetition or rehashing of something that happened last week when Venus conjoined the South Node in Libra before Venus moved into Scorpio. There might be something about the optimism of Mercury trining Jupiter on Wednesday and Thursday, that makes it lose its luster or makes you want to reassess it, and you will, because Mercury is going to trine Jupiter 3 times. But just because you lose some momentum or a resource or your enthusiasm doesn't mean that whatever you're working on can't grow into something wonderful, beneficial, thriving, flourishing. We also get the moon squaring Neptune on Friday, so pointing our sights, getting our attention on just activating the overall illusory nature of this week and these few days, and the entire Mercury retrograde, where we have Mercury squaring Neptune 3 times. You don't know what you don't know. As I said before, how would you navigate life if you couldn't possibly know or understand what's real and what isn't? If everything is an illusion and everything seems real, how do you make decisions? I think working with Neptune presents an opportunity to work with the concept of surrender. And Neptune can function beneficially, potentially, if you get quiet and learn how to listen. And that's a muscle you have to work over time. Also on Friday evening, the moon enters Scorpio and immediately applies to a trine with Saturn, activating another one of our Mercury retrograde aspects this season, Mercury in Capricorn sextile Saturn in Pisces. An interesting counterbalance to our 3 Mercury square Neptune aspects we get, which I keep calling a hot mess. Mercury sextile Saturn, Mercury in Capricorn sextile Saturn in Pisces, gives us an opportunity to stand back and look at things practically, immerse ourselves in the bit of whimsy that a Saturn in Pisces gives us, making fantasies real and showing us what's penetrable in the real world and giving that some practical applications. The moon's also going to conjoin Venus pretty much immediately, which is applying very closely to Jupiter. So it's the sweetest Scorpio moon you've ever seen in your entire life. Also, the sweetness you feel during this time has like a down and dirty undercurrent somehow. And Friday night could be kind of fun because, late Friday night, the wee hours of Friday/Saturday, the moon has cleared Saturn in Pisces and is applying to Venus, which is applying to Jupiter, and then the moon applies to Jupiter. So that's a good night. You might want to stay up all night. If you're thinking of staying up all night, do it. So on Saturday, early Saturday, the moon conjoins Venus, opposes Jupiter, and sextiles Mercury. So bringing all of these influences together for the week. Again, Mercury's very in shadow, and as I've mentioned before, the shadow period, for me at least, it really depends on your relationship with Mercury. The period right before Mercury goes retrograde is very retrograde-y, for me at least. And it might be just because my attention is on what could go wrong, and I'm trying to sniff out any possible errors I could make. So anything that does go wrong seems very highlighted to me because we're going to come back to it. And on Saturday evening, Venus opposes Jupiter. How nice. Venus also rules Jupiter in Taurus right now. So this is a difficult place for Venus, but Venus is very supported in whatever Venus wants, which is like something Venus can do in early Scorpio is attract. So if you want to attract a wealthy benefactor to play out your lascivious fantasy where this is good astrology for that. It's ideal conditions for the transgression of boundaries, but be careful. Enjoy responsibly. It's an opposition, so there's still a tension, and there's still, as an opposition, it has a little less stark contrast than a typical opposition because Venus rules the sign of Taurus and is opposing Jupiter in Taurus. Positively indulgent. Have some discernment. Enjoy yourself because winter is coming. It's kind of a sexy tension. It's Venus in a Mars-ruled sign. This could be a time to, Venus in Scorpio opposing Jupiter in Taurus could be a good time to beautiful haunted fantasies of Anyway, Venus in Scorpio has some pretty dark fantasies because Scorpio is very like underneath things, like underneath a dirty rock or something. When I was in high school, I was I was very obsessed with vampires, the idea of vampires. All of these characters in literature are extremely charming, extremely wealthy, and can't be touched by the rules and mores of common society. So I guess that's what attracted me to it. But if have you ever seen the movie The Hunger? I read a synopsis of that movie recently because I hadn't seen it in a while and I kind of forgot like what's the plot. But it's extremely dark and depressing. Since having some like spiritual education and experiences, I don't want to be in that. That's a very like there's a glamour that you can't touch. There's a like otherworldly glamour to Venus in Scorpio, especially supported by Jupiter in Taurus. But there's still a darkness there. Still, everything can turn to dust. Still, there's someone in a coffin wailing in the night in your basement. It's a combination of both the sumptuous, delightful fantasy and the real dark realness of the sign of Scorpio. I think of Jordan Peterson talking about that book, A Billion Wicked Thoughts, where he's like vampires, werewolves, billionaires, pirates, surgeons, the male monster. Sunday's pretty chill. We just have the moon opposing Uranus in Taurus and trining Neptune. So stick your finger in the light socket of the Atman. Be the witness. Remember, your Wi-Fi is a camera that can see through walls.